Hello, Dr. Rachel. Love you bunches.
Love you too.
Can you settle a debate with a coworker? You know, at these neighborhood stores or gas stations, they sell these male enhancement pills like Rhino, Mr. Seven, etc., etc. I don't think they work. A friend of mine, coworker in other words, wants to try these out. I know you don't endorse that stuff at all. If he was going to buy some, what would you recommend? Appreciate it. Love you bunches.
Thank you so much. It's always nice to see a handsome gent sending in a video. Thank you so much, Steve, for that question. And what I love about this question is I'm sure so many other people are wondering just as much about rhino pills as this is. And so I'm going to go ahead and settle the debate right here. Now, here's the thing about rhino pills. What I love about them is if you look at the back of them, they actually have this whole list of really natural substances listed there. But unfortunately, it appears that just looking at the history of rhino and how many times they've been sued, is that unfortunately it appears that what their main active ingredients is sometimes is sildenafil or taldilafil. So they got caught with a warehouse full of products that the FDA or the DEA raided, and they actually found that they had substantial levels of sildenafil or taldilafil in them, but they just hadn't listed it on the packaging. So I've gone through and looked at all the rhino pills in our gas station, and none of them listed on there. But what we got to keep in mind is that sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire, and that if they were found before, there may still be some in there. Now, that's not to say that there's anything wrong with taking sildenafil and taldilafil. You just should know that you're taking it when you taking it, because actually, when they looked at, let me show you this, there was a study, just kind of a case study of a guy who came into the emergency room, and he had taken, I don't know, was it three rhino pills? And so he ends up in the emergency room with pretty much what amounts to like a heart attack. So let me kind of share with you the uh, the study here. And so, like I said, it's one thing if you know it's in there, and it's one thing if you don't know that it's in here. So this study this paper is titled "ST Elevation Myocardial Infarct," which is myocardial infarct is another name for heart attack, and complete heart block in a nitrate-free patient using a new emerging substance called Rhino. And this is back from 2020, and basically they go on to talk about how the Rhino pills, he took 3 of the 950 milligram pills. And ultimately, he ended up having his EKG was to the point where they're like, "Oh my God, what's happening here? What's going on with this guy? We need to take him to surgery. We have to do all of these things." So one thing about this is two things. One, it reinforces the concept that we just talked about, which is sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire, right? So if you're experiencing erectile difficulties, you need to check with your doctor and make sure that this isn't cardiovascular disease, right? So he was probably having such poor responses with his erections that he decided to take extra rhino, which lets you know that he probably had a pre-existing situation going, but then the rhino tablets, taking 3 of them, just seemed to push things over the edge. So my biggest problem that I find with the rhino pills is that there's just no transparency there, right? So I've reached out several times in the past couple years to kind of, to ask them. So what exactly is it? Do you guys put sildenafil? Do you guys put taldilafil in there? And this is usually through email, and I haven't really ever gotten a response from them about that. They just kind of, kind of brush me off and say that the ingredients are listed on the website. But when you get to the website really isn't all that clear as to what's in it either. They just have pictures of the back of it instead of listing out the ingredients like they should. And they've been in trouble with the FDA several times, but they make so much money that they just pay the fines and they keep going. So instead of focusing on things like, rhino pills and things like that, I would advocate that you work to improve overall health, improve blood flow, some of the ways that we're talking about, decrease inflammation naturally, and boost your nitric oxide production. The reason that guys have success with the smoothie recipes is because it's boosting nitric oxide production. When you're boosting nitric oxide production, now pills like that your doctor prescribed for you, which is better than just getting them generic through a supplement that's not listing it on their label. Now these start to work because they work again because now we're boosting nitric oxide. Because remember, the Viagras and the Cialis slow down and they stop working for you because you become nitric oxide depleted. Because typically the blood vessels, I'm just going to use the word diseased, the blood vessels get diseased and no longer are able to make nitric oxide in the way that they used to in the past. And because of this, when nitric oxide is available, you got all these other important parts of your body that need nitric oxide. So the D and your erection, they get the leftover nitric oxide, right? So that's ultimately why boosting nitric oxide becomes such an important piece to this and can actually just rewrite history in terms of your erections. Now, also advocate the pumping piece, though, because the pumping reconditions tissue that has basically kind of fallen asleep on you, right? You got your muscle used to, have guns, and now maybe they're just triggers, not guns anymore. And if you want to get them back, what do you have to do? You got to pump. You got to get the blood flow back going there. You got to really all hands on deck. So ultimately, when it comes to the rhino pills, I do not advocate for rhino pills. I do not want you to end up in the emergency room because it's really hard to figure out what exactly is in them. And the high dosage of even the supplements and the herbal products that they put in there, they put such high doses in there that sometimes you're nauseous and can't perform anyway. So go slow when it comes to rhino. But I will say this, everybody's a little different. But if you're relying on rhino, you're relying on the Cialis, you're relying on those things, eventually you're going to get to the point where they start to fail you. So instead of putting a Band-Aid on it and getting the rhinos, I get emails every week from guys who the gas station pills used to work, doc. They've stopped. Help, because they'll work for a little bit and prop you up. But eventually what's not happening is the underlying problem isn't getting addressed. All right. Cool. So I hope that works. That helps.